My wife said to me, if you cannot trust me working late, maybe we shouldn't be together. Imagine this, it's 2 a.m., the house is dead silent except for the ticking clock mocking your paranoia. Your wife's key finally turns in the lock again for the third night this week. You confront her, heart pounding, words tumbling out, where were you really? And then she drops the bomb, if you can't trust me working late, maybe we shouldn't be together. Buckle up, because what unfolds next is a whirlwind of secrets, lies, and a marriage teetering on the edge. Will it shatter or survive? Hit play to dive into the chaos.
Hey, store lover. Welcome to the Narrative Hub, Reddit Stories. Believe me, this adventure gets wild, but it's only epic with you. Seriously, you make this possible. Want more stories? Greater adventure? Smash subscribe right now. Smash like. Comment below. Let's go.
My name is James Anderson, and that ticking clock wasn't just counting seconds, it was counting down the last moments of the life I thought I knew. When Jennifer said those words, her voice wasn't filled with anger or passion. It was cold, methodical, like a surgeon making a final, precise cut. In that one sentence, she took our entire marriage, the love, the vows, the home we built, lock, stock, and barrel, and she put it on the table as a bargaining chip. And the worst part. A small, dark part of my mind wondered if this was what she wanted all along. For me to give her a reason to say those exact words. Let me take you back to the beginning to show you how we got here. Jennifer and I had been married for 7 years, 7 good years or so I thought. We'd built what I believed was a solid foundation, trust, communication, shared dreams. We'd weathered the usual storms, job changes, financial stress, the death of my father 2 years prior. Through it all, Jennifer had been my rock. She was brilliant, driven, and fiercely loyal, or at least that's who I thought she was. Our life had a rhythm, a comfortable, predictable rhythm that I now realize I had taken for granted. Jennifer worked at Patterson and Associates, one of the city's most prestigious architectural firms. She was good at what she did, really good. She'd been climbing the corporate ladder steadily, and I was proud of her success. I worked in IT consulting, nothing glamorous, but it paid well and gave me the flexibility to be the steady, reliable husband while she chased her ambitions. We had plans, big plans. We'd been talking about starting a family, maybe buying a bigger house in the suburbs. Jennifer had even started looking at baby names, keeping a secret list in her phone that she thought I didn't know about. Our future felt secure, mapped out, inevitable. Just 3 weeks ago, this would have been unthinkable. 3 weeks ago, Jennifer would come home at 6, smelling like her vanilla perfume, and we'd talk about our day over dinner. We'd watch Netflix together, argue good-naturedly about what to order for takeout, plan weekend trips. Now she came home after midnight smelling of the stale, recycled air of the city and something else, something I couldn't place. Distant. The big project at her architectural firm had become a monolithic entity, a third person in our marriage that demanded all her time, all her energy, and all her secrets. The change hadn't happened overnight, it was gradual, insidious. First, it was just 1 or 2 late nights a week. Big presentation coming up, she'd explain, her voice tired but apologetic. I understood, I'd had demanding projects too. But then it became 3 nights, then 4, the apologies stopped, the explanations became shorter, more curt. You know how it is with the Nelson project, she'd say, as if that explained everything. I started eating dinner alone. The conversations about our day became one-sided monologues about my day while she scrolled through her phone, distracted and distant. When I asked about her work, about this mysterious project that was consuming her life, her answers became vague and dismissive. It's complicated, or you wouldn't understand the technical aspects, or my personal favorite, it's confidential. My suspicion wasn't born overnight, it was a slow-growing poison. It started with her phone, which was suddenly guarded like a state secret. She changed her passcode, something she'd never done in 7 years of marriage. She'd take it with her to the bathroom, keep it face down during dinner, and practically sleep with it under her pillow. Then came the forgotten wallet that just happened to have the day's receipts missing. Small things, tiny cracks in the foundation of our trust. I tried to ignore them. I told myself I was being paranoid, that the stress of her project was just getting to her. But a man knows, you feel it in your gut when the ground beneath your feet starts to shift. The worst part was how she made me feel like I was the problem. When I'd express concern about her late nights, she'd turn it around on me. You're being clingy, James, she'd say with a sigh that made me feel like a petulant child. This is my career we're talking about. I thought you supported my ambitions. She had this way of making my legitimate concerns sound like personal failings, like jealousy or insecurity, rather than the natural response of a husband who felt like he was losing his wife to something or someone else. I started noticing other changes too. Her wardrobe had subtly shifted. The comfortable clothes she used to wear to work, practical blazers, sensible heels, had been replaced by outfits that were more intentional. Tighter skirts, lower necklines, designer shoes that I knew she couldn't afford on her salary but that she explained away as necessary for client meetings. She'd started going to a different hair salon, getting her nails done more frequently. She looked beautiful, more beautiful than she had in years, but she wasn't dressing up for me. The intimacy between us had evaporated. We'd gone from a couple who couldn't keep our hands off each other to virtual strangers sharing a bed. When I'd try to initiate physical contact, she'd claim exhaustion or stress. Rain check, she'd say, turning away from me in bed. But I'd catch her texting late into the night, her face illuminated by the blue glow of her screen, a small smile playing at her lips that I hadn't seen directed at me in weeks. I became a detective in my own home, and I hated myself for it. I'd check the laundry hamper for unfamiliar scents on her clothes. I'd study our credit card statements for suspicious charges. I'd note the mileage on her car, trying to calculate if her claimed destinations matched the distance traveled. Every piece of evidence I gathered felt like a betrayal, not just of my trust in her, but of the man I thought I was. I'd never been jealous or suspicious. I'd always prided myself on being secure, trusting, the kind of husband who gave his wife space to be herself. But that man was disappearing, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. The first piece of hard evidence came on a Saturday morning. I was cleaning out her car, a mundane chore that was about to turn my world upside down. Jennifer had asked me to detail both our vehicles before her parents' visit the following weekend, a normal domestic request that felt like a lifeline to our old life. I was vacuuming the interior, trying to find some semblance of normalcy in this simple task, when under the passenger seat my fingers brushed against something small and metallic. I pulled it out. It was a single silver earring, a delicate leaf design with tiny diamonds that caught the morning light. It wasn't Jennifer's. I knew every piece of jewelry she owned, had bought most of it myself for birthdays, anniversaries, Valentine's days. My heart hammered against my ribs. It wasn't the late nights. It wasn't the distant calls, it was this one tiny silver thing that didn't belong in our life. I sat in the driver's seat of her car for 20 minutes just staring at that earring. It was beautiful, expensive looking, the kind of thing a successful woman would wear to important meetings or romantic dinners. The kind of thing another woman would leave behind after a night she wanted to remember. I thought about all the possible explanations. Maybe it belonged to a coworker. Maybe Jennifer had given someone a ride. Maybe it had been there for months and I was just now finding it. But deep down I knew this wasn't innocent, this was evidence. The earring became my obsession. I researched the maker Tiffany & Co., part of their exclusive Paloma Picasso collection. The earrings retailed for over $300, not the kind of jewelry someone would leave behind carelessly. This was deliberate, a calling card, a message meant for someone who would understand its significance. But who? She thought her ultimatum would be the end of it. She had no idea it was just the beginning. That night I waited for her. I'd practiced what I would say, how I would present the evidence without seeming accusatory. I wanted to give her a chance to explain, to provide some innocent reason for why another woman's expensive jewelry was in her car. The clock on the wall ticked past 1, then 2. When she finally walked in looking exhausted but somehow more alive than she'd seemed in weeks, I didn't shout. I just held out my palm, the silver earring glinting under the dim kitchen light. "I found this in your car," I said, my voice dangerously calm. I expected denial, tears, an angry outburst about my invasion of privacy. I got none of it. She glanced at the earring, and for just a moment, a fraction of a second, I saw something flicker across her face. Recognition, panic, relief, it was gone too quickly to interpret, replaced by that cool, professional mask she'd been wearing for weeks. "Probably belongs to Lisa from accounting. I gave her a ride last week," she said, her tone dismissive, like she was explaining something obvious to a slow child. She kicked off her heels with the practiced motion of someone who'd done it 1,000 times, but I noticed her hands were shaking slightly. "James, is this what we've become? You're searching the car for clues. This is exactly what I was talking about. This paranoia is going to destroy us." She weaponized it. In that moment I saw it clearly. She didn't just break my trust, she was using my broken trust as a shield. She had so perfectly reframed my valid concern as my fatal flaw that I almost believed her. She made me the villain in our story, the jealous husband whose suspicions were the real threat to our marriage. I was the one with the problem, not her. For a moment it worked. Shame and confusion washed over me like a cold wave. Was I becoming that guy? The controlling, suspicious husband who drove his wife away with his paranoia? I almost apologized. The words were right there, ready to tumble out. "I'm sorry, you're right. I'm just stressed about work and I let my imagination run wild." But that gut feeling screamed louder. Lisa from accounting had short, cropped hair and never wore earrings. I'd met her at several company functions. She was practical, no-nonsense, the kind of woman who wore a simple gold wedding band and nothing else. This delicate, expensive piece of jewelry belonged to someone else entirely. I knew I was walking straight into a trap, but I had to know the truth, even if it destroyed me. My investigation, if you could call it that, became an obsession. I wasn't just fighting for my marriage anymore, I was fighting for my sanity, for my sense of reality. The man she was turning me into, suspicious, resentful, sleepless, was a stranger to me. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. and find myself checking her side of the bed, calculating how many hours she'd been home, whether her hair smelled like shampoo or cigarettes. To beat her at this game, I had to learn the rules she was playing by, and that meant crossing lines I never thought I would. I started documenting everything: times she left, times she returned, changes in her appearance, unusual phone calls. I felt like I was building a case, gathering evidence for a trial that only existed in my head. I bought a small notebook and kept it hidden in my home office, filling it with timestamps and observations that made me feel both justified and disgusted with myself. One evening, while she was in the shower, a ritual that had become longer and more elaborate as if she was washing away evidence, I opened our shared laptop. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely type. I felt like a trespasser in my own life, a burglar stealing secrets from my own marriage. I wasn't looking for emails. She was too smart for that, too careful to leave obvious digital breadcrumbs. I was looking for anything that might give me insight into where she was spending her nights, who she was becoming when she wasn't home. I found it in the browser history, a search from a few days prior for the Azure Lounge, a high-end cocktail bar in a part of town we never went to. I knew the place by reputation. It was mentioned in the society pages, a spot where the city's power players went to make deals and conduct affairs away from prying eyes. A place known for quiet corners, dim lighting, and discreet conversations. The kind of place where married people went when they didn't want to be seen. The search wasn't recent. She'd looked it up 3 weeks ago, right around the time her behavior had changed, but what made my stomach drop was what came next in the browser history. She'd looked up the restaurant's menu, their hours, their private dining options. She'd researched this place like she was planning a campaign, not a casual dinner. The name of the lounge stuck in my head like a song I couldn't stop humming. I found myself driving past it during lunch breaks, noting the expensive cars in the parking lot, the well-dressed patrons walking in and out. It was exactly the kind of place Jennifer would love: sophisticated, exclusive, the sort of establishment that made you feel important just by walking through the door. A few days later, I was taking out the trash when a crumpled receipt fell from the pocket of the coat she'd worn the night before. My heart stopped. It was from the Azure Lounge, timestamped 11:43 p.m. The charge was for 2 old-fashioned cocktails, Jennifer's favorite drink, though she usually ordered wine when we went out together. $48. She was there with someone. The receipt was crumpled but not destroyed, hidden but not thrown away, as if part of her wanted me to find it. This was it, the proof I'd been looking for and dreading in equal measure. The anger I expected to feel was replaced by a cold, hollow certainty. My wife was having an affair. The late nights, the secrecy, the changes in her appearance, it all made sense now. She was meeting someone at an upscale bar, drinking expensive cocktails, living a life I knew nothing about. The man she was meeting was almost certainly Christopher Davis, the slick, ambitious lead on her big project. I'd seen him in photos from her company's website and at a few work functions we'd attended together. He was everything I wasn't: tall where I was average height, confident where I was thoughtful, the kind of man who commanded attention when he walked into a room. He was the type who looked like he was born wearing a tailored suit, who probably had never doubted himself for a moment in his entire charmed life. I started paying attention to Christopher's schedule, using the company's public calendar and social media to track his movements. The late nights didn't just line up with her project deadlines. I realized they lined up perfectly with his travel schedule. When he was out of town, Jennifer came home at normal hours. When he returned, suddenly she was working late again. The pattern was so obvious once I saw it that I felt stupid for not noticing sooner. I was ready for the final confrontation. I had the earring, the browser history, the receipt. I had my righteous anger all bundled up, ready to explode. I'd practiced my speech in the mirror, imagined her tears, her apologies, her desperate attempts to win me back. I thought I had the whole sordid story figured out. My ambitious wife was sleeping with her charming colleague, living out some corporate romance novel while I played the role of the oblivious husband at home. But as I sat in my office, staring at that flimsy piece of paper in my hand, my eyes caught something I had missed. Tiny print at the very bottom of the receipt, so small I needed my reading glasses to make it out. A corporate account name that was supposed to make the business expense legitimate, to hide the personal nature of the transaction. It wasn't her firm's name, it wasn't Christopher's. It was Nelson Corp. My blood ran cold. Nelson Corp wasn't just any company, they were Jennifer's firm's biggest competitor, the cutthroat rivals bidding for the exact same billion-dollar city contract that her team was working on. They were the enemy, the corporate adversary that her company had been trying to beat for months. What was Jennifer doing at a bar on Nelson Corp's corporate account? Suddenly, the neat, painful picture of infidelity shattered into a million far more terrifying pieces. This wasn't what I thought, it was worse. In that moment, staring at that receipt, I found myself wishing truly, desperately wishing that my wife was just having an affair. Because what I was now uncovering would force me to question everything I thought I knew about the woman I married. This wasn't about another man. This was about betrayal on a scale I couldn't comprehend. I wasn't asking the right question. It wasn't, "Who are you sleeping with?" The real question was, "What have you done?" My mind raced through the possibilities, each one more disturbing than the last. Corporate espionage, bribery, insider trading, sabotage. The woman I'd married, the woman I thought I knew better than anyone in the world, was involved in something that could destroy both our lives. The late nights weren't romantic trysts, they were business meetings, criminal business meetings. I spent the rest of that day researching Nelson Corp, trying to understand what Jennifer could possibly be doing with them. The company was ruthless, known for winning contracts through any means necessary. There had been rumors over the years, whispered allegations of bribery, industrial espionage, dirty tricks that skirted the edge of legality. But they were successful, profitable, and had never been caught doing anything provably illegal. When she came home that night, I didn't wait. I had the receipt laid out on the kitchen island like an indictment, like evidence in a trial that was about to begin. "We need to talk," I said. She saw the receipt and her professional mask finally, terrifyingly, cracked. For the first time in weeks, I saw raw fear in her eyes, not the fear of being caught in an affair, but something deeper and more desperate. This was the fear of someone whose entire life was about to come crashing down. "Don't ask, James," she whispered, her voice pleading in a way I'd never heard before. "You don't want to know, trust me, you don't want to know." "Oh, I think I do," I shot back, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and dread. "The late nights, the secrecy, it's not Christopher, is it? You've been meeting with them, with Nelson Corp. What are you doing, Jennifer? What in the world are you doing?" She sank into a chair, her face pale and drawn. The confident, successful woman who'd been a stranger to me for weeks was gone, replaced by someone who looked fragile and terrified. Her hands shook as she reached for the receipt, studying it like she was seeing it for the first time. The truth, when it came, tumbled out in a frantic, hushed torrent. It was corporate espionage, but not the way I'd imagined. It wasn't Jennifer selling secrets to the enemy. It was something far more complex and dangerous. She and Christopher hadn't been sleeping together. They had been meeting with a disgruntled executive from Nelson Corp., a man named Richard Hawthorne who'd been passed over for promotion and was hungry for revenge against his own company. They were feeding him carefully crafted misinformation about their own company's bid, false information designed to make Nelson Corp overconfident and miscalculate their own strategy. But it was more than that. Hawthorne was also giving them intelligence about Nelson Corp's approach, their weaknesses, their internal politics. It was a double cross within a double cross, a conspiracy that involved betraying competitors while potentially destroying careers and lives. The late nights were clandestine meetings in nondescript bars, Jennifer explained, her words coming out in a rush. Richard insisted on different locations every time: hotels, restaurants, parking garages. The Azure Lounge was just one of many. "He's paranoid, James. He thinks Nelson Corp suspects something and he's getting more desperate, more demanding." The secrecy, the password-protected phone, the guarded behavior, it wasn't to hide an affair from me, it was to hide a conspiracy from the world. Every precaution she'd taken, every lie she'd told, was to protect not just herself but me, our life together, our future. And her ultimatum? "If you can't trust me, maybe we shouldn't be together." It wasn't a threat to end our marriage over jealousy. It was a desperate, clumsy attempt to protect me from becoming an accomplice. She couldn't tell me the truth because knowledge would make me complicit, dragging me into a mess that could destroy us both. She was trying to push me away with a story she knew I'd believe, a simple tale of infidelity to keep me clean. She chose to look like a cheater to protect me from looking like a criminal. "Christopher, he got reckless," she confessed, her voice cracking with emotion. "He's the one who pushed for this, who convinced me it was just business, just competitive intelligence, but it's spiraling out of control. Richard is starting to ask for more than information. He wants money, guarantees, promises we can't keep. The earring, it must be his wife's. He borrowed her car one night when his was being serviced. James, I'm in over my head. I tried to back out last week, but Christopher says we're in too deep. Richard knows too much about us now." The room was spinning. The woman I had painted as a cold, cheating stranger was suddenly a terrified conspirator trapped in a game she couldn't win and couldn't quit. She hadn't betrayed our marriage vows, but she had betrayed every moral principle we shared. She had lied, cheated, and conspired her way into a situation that could destroy not just her career but her freedom. "How much does he want?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. $50,000, she said, and I felt the world tilt on its axis. He says it's insurance, a guarantee that we'll follow through on our promises, but I know what it really is, it's blackmail. Once we pay him, we'll never be free, he'll own us. And I was faced with an impossible decision. The choice was no longer about forgiving infidelity, that almost seemed quaint now. It was about what I would do with this devastating truth. Do I stand by her, help her navigate this treacherous landscape she had created, and become complicit in corporate espionage? Do I convince her to go to her bosses, to confess everything and face the catastrophic fallout that would obliterate her career, our financial stability, and possibly land her in prison? Or do I walk away from the woman I love because she was no longer the person I thought I married? The financial implications alone were staggering. If this came out, Jennifer wouldn't just lose her job, she'd be blacklisted from the industry, possibly face criminal charges. We'd lose our house, our savings, our entire life as we knew it. But if we paid Richard, if we gave in to his demands, we'd be crossing a line from which there would be no return. We'd be criminals, pure and simple. She looked at me, her eyes brimming with tears, the confident mask she had worn for weeks completely gone. In its place was the woman I'd fallen in love with 8 years ago, vulnerable and lost and asking for help she wasn't sure I could give. She was asking me not just to forgive her but to join her in whatever came next. "I love you," she whispered. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I love you, James. Everything I did was to protect us, to secure our future. I thought I could control it, thought I was smart enough to play their game without getting burned. I was wrong." The ticking of the clock on the wall filled the silence. It was no longer mocking me, it was waiting for my answer. Every second that passed was a step toward a future I couldn't yet see, a choice that would either save what was left of our life together or shatter it for good. In that moment, sitting across from my wife in our kitchen, surrounded by the remnants of the life we'd built together, I realized that love isn't just about the good times. It's about what you do when everything falls apart, when the person you love shows you parts of themselves you never wanted to see. It's about choosing to fight for something even when you're not sure it's worth saving. The clock kept ticking and I kept thinking, and somewhere in that silence, I began to understand that this wasn't just about Jennifer's choices anymore. It was about mine. And whatever I decided would define not just our future but the man I was going to be when the dust settled. The story was far from over, in fact it was just beginning.